What's up, y'all? Welcome to Outside the Clutch. My name's John. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is going to be a special one because this actually wraps up the very last interview for everyone that was a member of the original 15 Minutes of Lame from 2020. So big shout out to all the people that have participated with the Snakes and the Fat Man 15 Minutes of Lame. I hope you all continue to kill it and continue to do what you do. Before we jump into tonight, let's just say some highs, give some love to the people that support us. Will's Hella Heat. What's up, dude? I know you're excited for this one. You've been talking my head off all week. I'm excited for it. Arvin, what's up, dude? Can't wait to meet you in NARBC in September. We should have before. Kaiju Constrictors, what's going on? Thanks for tuning in. Jamie, 15 Minutes of Lame fam. She was one of the first ones I actually interviewed. If you want to look back to pre-actual podcasts when we were just hanging out with people. Leviathan Snakes, appreciate y'all. Hope you enjoy this one. Patrick is the man. Pretty excited for it. Hope County Constrictor or Pythons. I almost messed that up. Someone did it right after the other, and like you both have the same name almost, and it's a good way to play off of each other, and it always messes me up. Eric's Morph Factory, what's going on? Thanks for stopping in. The man himself, Chris Eaton, thanks for stopping by, giving some support to Patrick. I don't need it. No, I'm just playing. I appreciate your support, brother. It's always a good time. Enjoy John Wick 4. Cuddle Time Critters, what's going on? Thanks for stopping in. Let's see. Morphic Exotics. I just messed that up bad. Hope you enjoy the show. Mindy. That's fam all day, every day. I appreciate her. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit. I'm going to do something that Chris absolutely despises, but hey, it's part of who I am and what I do. For those that don't know, the Lacey Act amendments have come back into play. So everything that I make off of my podcast, whether it's regular ad revenue or anything that is given, will be going to US ARC for the next counting this week and the following 2 weeks. We started this last week. All day, every day. Okay. Yep, I know. That sounds really familiar, right? All right. So the Lacey Act amendments, they've come up multiple times before. We freaking hate them. It's always a fight to get it out from the national spotlight, right? So anything we could do for US ARC, I'm going to try to do. Like I said, everything that I make off of YouTube, anything that comes in outside of that, that's going to go directly to US ARC. And I will be sharing that to not be like the other ones that say they donate and don't donate. Well, I'm not going to say that because I don't know that they actually do or don't, but I've never seen proof. So we're going to go past that. Man, if you want to be successful in this, that's what tonight's about. I really hope that we get a lot of good stuff out of this episode. But in order to be successful in this, you actually have to take care of your animals. Can't take care of your animals without the proper equipment. Here at Outside the Clutch, we're honored to be sponsored by Vivotech. Are you ready for innovation? Tired of the same boring product that's been used for 30 years? Ready to give your reptiles and amphibians the UV they really deserve? Then look no farther than Vivotech. Their 3-watt LED bulbs provide the UV rays your animals have been missing. With 3 bulbs to fit your pet's climate needs, plus a dimmable feature, it's the only bulbs we use for UV. And it's the only bulb with a 2-year warranty in the industry. Plus now you can monitor all your pet's husbandry from your phone 24/7 with their sensors and even ship your customers' animals in their custom bags. So what are you waiting for? Go to vivtechproducts.com today, use code FCLUTCH0322 for 15% off, and provide your animals the best care they've ever had. And there's honestly only one way to maintain proper husbandry on top of your equipment. You need the right bedding. And there's only one bedding or substrate that we use here. Are you ready for the best coconut substrate in the game? Then you gotta get ReptoChip. First off, it's America's chip because it's veteran owned. Secondly, why wouldn't you want the best cocoa chip for your animals? Go to ReptoChip.com, use code FeelyChippin for 10% off up to 3 breeder blocks, or your entire order of Easy Hatch trays or any Redline Science equipment on the site. Limit 1 coupon per customer. Or reach out to me as a representative in the El Paso area, and don't forget to join the Reptolution, where all profits go to helping those in need within the reptile community. And finally, show me snakes. You know what? We've worked a show. I forgot to film because I'm a big piece of poo, and I'm going to admit it. You know what? I enjoy the shows. I stay focused on the shows. I didn't take the time to film. So I don't have a proper commercial for them. And let's be honest, I probably won't, because it's just easier to read off my freaking phone and tell you when the show dates are and how amazing these are. You get to see animals that you probably won't see at any of the major shows because they actually get to carry hots, or you get people that bring in stuff that just isn't always deemed popular within the industry, right? So if you want to check out a show, the next couple of weekends, we have Springfield, Missouri. We have Groveton, Georgia. I am going to mess that up. Pudka, Kentucky, and Jackson, Mississippi. So if you haven't checked out a show yet, hey, make sure you check out our show. Tell them that you heard about it through Outside the Clutch. All right. So let's jump into our guest. Like I said, this is the very last one of the original 15 Minutes of Lane family. We have all somewhat stuck together throughout the years, even if it's just in minor ways. We've all tried to help each other. We all continuously push each other. It's just a great event. And I'm really excited to finally have Patrick McKnight from Chimera. Such a cheesy applause. I love the freaking soundboard.
I wasn't emotionally prepared for that. Thanks. That's exciting. You didn't warn me. All of a sudden I just come on and there's, a laugh track and a cheer track, and geez, I didn't know this was professional.
No warning. No. If you're looking for professional, you gotta find another podcast, bro.
Yeah. Okay.
This is probably the least professional podcast on.
I don't know about that. I was on Snakes and the Fat Man. I don't know.
Oh man. So how are you doing tonight, Patrick?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, man. There's always something going on with life, but can't complain.
Oh, dude, always something going on. I think that's just the motto in general, right? We all have our trials, tribulations, and shit we're trying to do.
Absolutely. So let's jump into you pre-reptiles, because everyone has a story that led them into reptiles, right?
Yeah.
But this podcast isn't just for the reptiles. It's for getting to know you behind your brand, right? So
yeah,
what would you say like embodies who you are as a person and made you that way before you jumped into reptiles?
Curiosity.
What's your bring up?
Yeah, curiosity. I have several friends that, we were having a conversation one day and they said they thought I was the most curious person they knew. And that's honestly just been kind of the driving factor for most of my life. I mean, as far as like life before reptiles, I mean, I always had reptiles growing up, never snakes or anything like that. Tortoises, iguanas, basically all the worst kind of pets you could have, for sure. Apparently those were the easy ones for the parents to get.
It's the cheap snakes, $50 ones that if they don't make it, it's okay.
That, or like, box turtles that I'd find out in the fields behind the house, stuff like that. As far as like the snakes, like when all that really came in, I had a dog die and I was absolutely devastated and heartbroken. And so the solution to the problem in my life, in my mind, was let's get a pet tortoise. It'll live forever if I take care of it, right? And so I was actually at the Lone Star Reptile Expo picking up a sulcata, which clearly a responsible decision.
Very great.
Very responsible. And while I was there was a breeder that had a pied, and I was like, whoa, that shit looks cool. And I went home and I was like, the sulcata was really cool and I liked it, but I was like, I want something I can like interact with and hold. And I was like, a pet snake would be kind of cool. And and my wife wasn't inherently opposed to it. So I was like, well, let's just the next show we go to, let's see if we can find something cool. So, during that window, I started really digging into ball python morphs, and this was like 2011, 2012. So like World of Ball Python was still like the shit, and like where you would go to look at stuff, and like you could actually look at everything on there within a reasonable period of time.
And
And
it
so I
was
remember
actually
seeing like,
updated.
what's that? Yeah, freshly updated, and then there was probably less than 100 morphs on there at that time. Like it was very sparse, and it's like, I remember seeing a killer clown on there, and I was like, "Phew, that is some hot shit." And that's actually kind of what convinced me to start breeding. I saw how much they were selling for, and I was like, I really like the idea of snakes. Like talking to some breeders, it seemed fairly straightforward as far as like breeding animals went. And I was like, let's get some investors together and let's see if we can buy some of this stuff. And I ended up buying a pair of pastel clowns, and it kind of just rolled from there, man. So
Nice, nice. So
yeah,
when you first rolled into it, you decided that it was literally going to be a business. It wasn't just, oh, I'm just going to bring stuff on.
yeah, yeah. So I've always been like super entrepreneurial. I was the little shithead growing up that would like buy and sell sports cards, and then I actually paid for my undergrad education, and like we lived off of money by buying and selling Pokemon cards. So I've always been very like, like I said, entrepreneurial spirited. And and so a lot of times when my hobbies involve ways of trying to make money, for better or worse. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's just a thing. Um, and so when I got the snake, like it just made sense. Like, well, if I'm gonna get a snake, I might as well get two, and we might as well turn this into a business because there's clearly money to be made, and I like it. And at the end of the day, if I'm heating a room or a rack, it costs the same to heat one snake in a rack as it does to heat seven or whatever the number was at the time, right? Um, and so yeah, it in my mind, it definitely like right off the bat, I was like, this is going to be a business. Looking back in hindsight, I don't know if it really was a business right off the bat. It didn't put the money in that it really needed to be. I was finishing up undergrad at that time and, getting ready to move across the country to go to grad school. So really the time to make it a business wasn't viable, but yeah, in my mind, it started off, I was like, this is going to be a business. We're going to make money. So yeah.
So who were some of those people? Because you said you talked to a couple of breeders. Who
Yeah.
were some of those that really stood out to you and like the way that they work that kind of set that hook into you, so to speak?
Yeah. So, unironically, Justin was one of the first breeders I ever talked to. Zero chance he remembers that interaction at all. But Justin, before he was, Canova or even, JKR at the peak of what, 2018, 17, like he had some cool stuff. I remember going and you could dig through his records. I interacted loosely with Ralph Davis. That was still, you can still go and look at his incubator records online. Bob Clark was actually one of the first breeders I bought stuff from at one of the Lone Star Expos. I bought let's see, a butter hypo female and a Mojave hypo female from him at the show, and so we talked a bit there. Um, there were some local breeders. I'm trying to think of. I feel bad not knowing names, but there were some small local breeders that I couldn't tell you the names. Like the guy that had the pied, I remember him so vividly, and I just can't remember his name. There's another young guy at another table that I talked to a bit, but never really passed much outside of the shows. Um, Ben Rennick, he was somebody I talked to quite a bit at the NARBC in Arlington. Um, yeah, man. So some old names and some names that people kind of know now, but didn't know as much then. So.
Most definitely. So you started this in school. I tried that trial and tribulation, so I
Yeah.
wholeheartedly feel how difficult that can be. What was your area of focus while you were in school?
Biochemistry. So undergrad was microbiology, and then when I went to grad school for my PhD, it's biochemistry and molecular biology. The topics within that specifically that I studied was lipid signaling and wound healing, and then I did also what's called bioinformatics, which is essentially using computer software and writing algorithms to analyze really large sets of data, trying to find changes in gene expression and what's called alternative splicing expression to help identify targets for drugs, whether it's cancer, wound healing,
You
sepsis.
made that sound a lot better.
So yeah. So that's what I did, for I guess from 2010 to 13 was undergrad, and then from 13 to 18, 18 was grad school. So
So
quite a
what
way.
kind of piqued your interest in like the splicing and figuring out how to work genetics and how the coding falls into play?
Um. Oh man, I
Dun,
that's
dun.
a hard one to answer because I can't tell you there was a moment where I was like, oh, you know what I'm really interested in is like alternative splicing. That was never like something I was. It was more so I wanted to learn a tool set like with the bioinformatics, and that was the project that I was basically given to learn how to do that stuff on. So my we would call it passion. My passion coming into grad school was wound healing more so, and just like sepsis and inflammatory diseases in general. So when I first came in and I pitched, the project I wanted to work on, I was like, y'all are working on inflammation in your lab. Wound healing plays a big part in inflammation. I think that if we go down this path, we could find something really cool. So that's really where like my passion was. And then animal surgeries and things like that. I did, 90% of the surgeries in the lab, and I enjoyed that a lot, and then kind of transitioned into the bioinformatics.
Was there ever a time? So I know like all the studies that like colleges do, right?
Huh?
The military is the first one to pick those up, obviously, because it's a
Yeah.
very low bid, and you're like, well, you're the test dummies. Was there ever like a project that you were working on within your years of college that you kind of saw come to fruition on the commercial side?
No. So normally that process takes a really long time. So like with the wound healing stuff. So I still actively work with the VA hospital. So all of our funding was through the VA. Well, one of our grants was through the VA, I shouldn't say. My project specifically was funded through VA funding. And so the goal was basically to find some kind of, chemical that we could put on wounds to help them heal faster. And more specifically, like pressure ulcers and chronic wounds. And, if people aren't aware, a lot of that comes from being really sedentary and not being able to move. And a lot of veterans that come back, with injuries from war or whatever, they're missing limbs, they're, paralyzed. They get a lot of bed sores, which then turn into ulcers and chronic wounds and things like that. And so that was kind of a target audience for us. So we would do, regular rounds where we would go and visit patients and collect samples and interact with them. And then, look for these drug targets that in an animal model would work. And then the next step, right, if it works in the animal model, is to take it to the human side. And so we have a couple of targets from my grad school days that have worked in animals, and I know that they're starting to transition them into clinical trials, but it's probably 5 to 10 years out at best from becoming anything that might even turn into something, right? Because just because it works in an animal doesn't mean it's going to
Yeah.
work in a human. And, even more specifically, if it works in a mouse model, that doesn't mean it's going to work in the next step up, which is generally like a pig model. And then that pig model may not even translate. So there's a lot of steps that have to happen before you ever even get to the point of putting it into humans. So,
That's cool, man. I think it'd be really neat to see something that you worked on and like you devoted X
yeah.
amount of years to actually become an actual medical practice. Being a
Yeah,
medic myself,
absolutely.
there was all kinds of tools that we were like, "Oh, this is freaking garbage," and you're just like, you're thinking, like, I can't tell you how many times we used intervention, and we're like, "There's so many better ways you could do this,"
Yeah.
but we don't have the mindset. Like, we're just a bunch of dumb kids. We don't have the mindset to create it, but I think it'd be really cool to be one of the people that came up with something that actually worked.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it's super cool for sure. But it's one of those processes. It takes a long time, and to be honest, 99% of the people that go through grad school, like most of what they work on, never directly ties into um something. I was fortunate, and where I fell into this lab when I came in was they had already put 15, 20 years into work on this specific, signaling pathway. And so then I just come in and I pick that work up, and just fortunately my chain link happened to be the last one before we found a drug target, right? So there's a lot of luck involved in that too. So it's, sometimes you can be the best scientist in the world and it just doesn't really matter. Like you're a cog in the process. You may not be the last chain. So it is what it is.
So let's kind of take that and then divert it towards what you do now. Was that passion derived from like what you were doing in college, or did you kind of veer that way because of the genetics that you were seeing within snakes?
When you say what I'm doing now, you're talking about like just the business itself and
Well, I
like,
mean, like when you were in college, you were talking about
yeah,
like doing the splicing and
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
understand all that. Was that because of what you were seeing with morphs popping up and
Oh
trying to
no,
understand that better? Or
no, no. No, it wasn't. They kind of just went hand in hand. So in undergrad, I remember like as weird as this is, this was 2011 or so, 2012, and like I remember thinking like, oh, it'd be really cool if we could like genotype and like do morph tests for snakes at the time, and looking up like sequencing costs and things like that. But no, I can't say the snakes never really drove my passion or like what I was doing in undergrad. Undergrad was a job, and the snakes were a job in my mind. They were kind of separate entities. There's some overlap there, but realistically speaking, like direct interaction between the two. Nothing I did in grad school, I would say directly related to the snakes. I mean, like there's basic knowledge and techniques that you kind of pick up along the way, but that would have happened whether I was doing snake work or not.
and so when you were in college still, that's when you started. How big was your collection at that time? Like, I think most of us understand, like, you're saying it as two full-time jobs. So are we looking at like a 40-hour job, or are you looking at like a full out, hey, 40 to 60 hour, 40 to 60 hour, or just
Yeah.
every waking hour essentially?
Yeah. So for those who haven't gone through grad school, it's basically like especially in like the physical sciences, you just live in the lab basically, so it's like 70-80 hour work weeks. You don't sleep, and then you go home and you're still thinking about your project, because basically the faster you get through your project and the quicker you get to the answer, the faster you graduate. So it's just kind of like this constant drive. That being said, so the snake collection, so I started with like 2, and then it went to like 10, and then it went to like 30, all within, like a year. Um, eh, and then it kind of sat around probably the 30 to 60 range for a few years, and it just slowly grew over time from that point. But, the snakes really like they weren't a full-blown job at all. And that's where like I have this like, hindsight, right? It wasn't a business. It was still a hobby. Like I was treating it like a business, and in my mind it was a business, but just the numbers and the math, it just I don't think it really was a business, right? It was definitely more a hobby. Until I graduated and really, invested money, and it became, a full-time gig then. But yeah, so through grad school it was really, 60, 70, 80 hours a week in the lab, and then I would come home and you take care of animals, do whatever you have to. Take care of we also have tortoises, take care of the tortoises, and then yeah, it was the majority of our time was animals in school though, for sure.
So when you graduated, you decided, well, that 8 years just it was just for fun, and I'm gonna do ball pythons full time. And you said you invested. What made you decide to, instead of jumping out into the professional world of
Yeah.
scientists, you're gonna do ball pythons professionally?
It was kind of a running joke with a lot of my friends in grad school that I did science as a hobby, which is like the polar opposite of most grad students. I did go into like the professional world, and I still technically am in it. So I went and I worked for a pharmaceutical company for a year, and that's what we used to, do a lot of investing in the snakes. And then I still work for the Veterans Hospital here in Richmond, and then also the University of Virginia doing bioinformatics work. But it's all remote work that I can do on my computer, and it allows for a lot of free time while scripts are running and things like that, that I can take care of the animals and manage the business, and we can still do stuff. The big reason why, though, the snakes have, grown and taken over, the majority of my time, it feels like at this point. It all goes back to I'm very entrepreneurial. I want to work for myself. I derive a lot of satisfaction in the struggle and the growth and the work, and that that opportunity, while is there in science, it's not the same. And for me, starting this business and growing it from the ground up, and working and developing it with, my wife, and, now Andre and his wife. And that that all was a lot more appealing to me than the science side. I love the science, and that's why I still do it, because it, keeps my mind sharp. It's stuff I'm still interested in. But I saw, I derived a lot more joy out of the snakes and the snake business than I did, um, the pharmaceutical world, especially, and then even the lab world. Also, for being completely blunt, like, the money is infinitely better with the snakes than it would ever be, in the science world. Uh, I like the gentle shrug there. I promise. Like, if you,
I think that really depends on who you are.
well,
To be fair, I'm just saying, like, there's some people that'll put in and say that it's a time job and like devote their life to it, that will never reach that point where it's going to be better than being even the most basic level of a scientist or any professional in that manner.
you
Um,
s- so you're inherently correct in that some people, no matter how hard they work, things just don't work out. So, like, one of my really close friends is a business consultant, and we were having this conversation today about, like, great businessmen. It wasn't that, I shouldn't say today. We were having a conversation though one day, and it was about, like, great businessmen, right? And the conversation regularly comes up, not necessarily between him and I, but just people in general, like, is Jeff Bezos a great businessman? And people will immediately say yes because of Amazon. But then the question is, look at other things he's done, and has he been super successful in that? And then the question is, why is he successful in those? And I'm not saying Bezos is not a great businessman. He probably is. But some people, things just work out for in life, and some people they don't, right? Generally speaking, life is kind of like a bell curve, right? So you have your left side of the curve, then it kind of goes up and then goes down. Most people fall on the average of that curve. People on the left side are the people that just, things just don't fucking work out for whatever reason. It doesn't matter, they just don't work. And the people on the right are the people that, no matter what they do, they could shit on a fucking desk and they make millions of dollars. It just works. And so the question is, like, sometimes it's not just about work ethic. Like, sometimes, like, things just don't work because that's how the numbers are, right? Somebody, things have to fail for somebody. um so I think you're inherently right on that side. I would argue that in the snake world specifically, people fail far more often because either A, they're not willing to invest the money required, because we have this weird mindset in ball pythons especially, that I can start this massive, super, efficient, super profitable business with $10,000, and it's just not viable. Realistically, it's not. You can start a business with 10 grand, but as someone who did that and struggled for, 5 years trying to do this, and then started dumping real money into it and things took off, like, money is a big factor. It's not the only factor, but it buys you time, and time is super, super valuable in this industry. The other thing is, a lot of people don't like to sell snakes. Like, they pretend like they do, but they don't. Like, it takes effort to actually sell an animal, and just listing an animal on Morph Market is not selling an animal. That's as passive as you can possibly get. Active marketing, being on social media, networking with people when you're at shows, seeing comments on people and commenting on that stuff. Like, that all takes work, and a lot of people don't put that effort in, and they also don't follow the market as a whole, right? So then, we had these pricing spikes because of COVID, which was awesome. And you go back, and if you look at historical data through Morph Market, you can see the big spikes. What's funny to me now, though, right, is people shit on the market and they're like, oh, pricing is way down. It's really not. If you go and pull average pricing, we're down like 15-ish% compared to what peak pricing was, on the average listed animals that are marked as sold. And then if you go and look at pricing compared to like 2018 or 2019, we're still up like 50%. Like, the market is actually better today than it was in 2018 and 2019. But people got so spoiled with COVID. And then, you talk to the people that aren't selling stuff now, and a lot of times, and this is not, I understand there are exceptions to this comment, but, like, a lot of times you go and I look at the people that are complaining, and I look at their pricing, and the pricing is still, absurd pricing compared to what it should be now, right? Pricing has gone down, but when you're pricing stuff, it's just not going to sell. People have more competition. You also have a lot of people, uh, that produce what I would say are like pet level animals, and that's not, like, I don't want that to sound like a negative, but, like, when I think of a pet animal, it's somebody that right off the street is going to come in and spend $500 or less and buy that animal as a potential pet for their kid, right? There's nothing wrong with those animals. There's a lot of money to be made in those animals. That makes up over 60% of the market right now. Like if you once again just go and look at the numbers on Morph Market, start segregating things by pricing, just take, 15, 20 random pages of listings on Morph Market and look, the vast majority of the market is those animals. So if that's what you're producing, you're competing with 50+% of the market at that price point. That's tough. That's hard. You have to really stand out at that point. That's why, when people say like high end stuff is easier to sell, it's less that it's easier to sell and more that there's less options at that price point. And so people don't have as many choices. So if they want to buy into that project, they have to spend the money on that animal. You don't get the options. You can't be like, well, I don't want the DG clown pied with pastel. I want the DG clown pied. And it's like, well, there's no others available. So if you want this one, here it is. Right. And so that also shifts things. So I think a lot of people complaining, it seems, are working in that price range where they're competing with a lot of people. And then pricing is, a good way to stand out. And you just have to be super, super competitive in the pricing realm and actually follow market data and follow pricing and try and do your best to adjust pricing. Andre and I adjust pricing every 2 weeks on stuff. We go through, we look at the market, we look at how many clicks we're getting, we look at how many views we're getting. If we're getting inquiries, we look at that. We have a general percentage that we, base stuff off. And if we're getting that many clicks, then we roll with it. And life is good. And if we don't, then we look at the pricing and we adjust it. And sometimes a price adjustment of $25 is all it takes. We find there's these thresholds with customers where they will they'll see, they'll be sorting. I'm assuming they're sorting by price, right? And so they'll put anything $299 and under. So that $300 snake doesn't get picked up because it's $300 instead of $299 when they probably would have bought it. And so then we bump it down to $275 as the example, right? And all of a sudden that snake sells the next day. It's because they're finally being included in those searches, and that scales for most price points, whether it's 500, 1,000, whatever, it scales. And so we find even sometimes minor price changes can make an effect on what people are searching for. And then some morphs, you don't get a lot of traction in the sense of like people see them, but the moment people see them, they sell. Like clown pies for us have been one of those things. We actually don't get a lot of clicks on them, but the moment somebody clicks on them, they sell. We have one of the highest conversion rates in that morph when it comes to inquiries and clicks. And so you kind of learn that stuff too as you're selling it. Also, one of the things we look at too is we look at how long stuff sits on the market in general. For us, it's right around 30 days on average is how long it takes to sell a snake. So if animals are moving within 2 weeks, that's fantastic. If an animal's been sitting for 60, 90 days, well, then we really start asking questions on what's going on. But like, these people that get worried and saying like nothing's selling. Well, one of my questions is like, well, how long has it been? Has it been a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Like what's going on here? Like, because sometimes it does just take time because it is kind of passive, right? You're sitting.
Well, it's like you were saying with that. Sorry, not to interrupt.
No, you're good. I get on a monologuing roll. You're good, man.
Oh, you're good. But I really think that while you're saying it's passive, it's just one avenue, right? And so
Yes.
many people forget. Like, I could completely understand. I only work a couple of shows, but I only produce so many animals, so I only have to work a number of shows.
Yeah.
Like I was telling you before the show, I have a Morph Market account. Like my first year when I first produced stuff, I put stuff on my Morph Market account. I've paid for the account for 2 years and never used it.
Yeah.
So, because I have to have animals to have on the table at the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do better face to face than I do talking over a computer. Like
Absolutely.
you can't read my very blunt, as
Oh,
I'm sure many of us here are, my very
dude. I
blunt
mean,
comments the right way over a text message versus me talking to you at a show and being like, well,
right.
this is the way it is.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but
I,
I go ahead. I'm sorry.
no. I was gonna say I struggle with that as well, and it's one of the godsends with Andre. Andre does great with customers online, and that's why if you send a message to Chimera's Morph Market, you're not talking to me, you're talking to Andre. Because the last customer I talked to, I told him to deep throat a cactus, so I can't be trusted. So,
And then
yeah.
there's
So I
worse
feel
ways
you
to
there.
go.
I feel you there for sure.
But I really think that the people saying I'm having an issue moving animals, it's because they get so drawn into one side of it, or
Yeah.
they've never really had that. Like if you ever go into a sales job, whether it's cars or anything commission based, right?
Mhm.
The first 2 weeks to a month is nothing but learning how to close a sale, how to talk to
Right.
people, how to present yourself, how to learn the jargon of the actual job, right? And so many people jump into this, and we're all hermits. We all stay in. We don't like to talk to each other unless we absolutely have to. Like I'm not reaching out to Patrick unless I need something from Patrick. So um,
Yeah.
that in itself causes an issue. But once you get in front of people, or even through morph marketing, some of us are very more gifted at that than others,
Right.
but learning how to actually present yourself and how to close that deal is completely different. And then your ethics behind it, like the people that you're selling to have to actually see that you give a crap about the animal, that there's an actual passion behind this. It can't just be, oh well, you like it, here, take it,
Yeah.
I'll give you this discount, or I'll do this. And there's so many ways to fiddle with the numbers, right? Like
Mhm.
you can make your positives and negatives. You're going to get your ebb and flow no matter what. That's just the
Yeah.
way a market works. But at the end of the day, are you oriented to where you can actually take care of that customer?
Yeah, for sure. I think customer care is an important part of this whole process that not enough people acknowledge or understand. And like I said, I was never spectacular at that part. I shine a lot more on like the networking side and interacting with people. I know I will. I spent a lot of time early on throughout the whole process, especially in grad school when I didn't have money to invest. I invested my time in like being on the phone with people and getting to know people on a personal level because I felt like, while I do like a lot of these people on a personal level, I think also it's very important to have them as like key partners going forward as from a business side too. And so for me, networking was this huge wealth of capital that I could do, and I felt I excelled at that part. And so for me, like that's really where there was a lot of growth, and what I think has helped us be, a big part of why we've been successful to this point is the networking side of it, and things like that for sure.
Oh, sure. That relationship building means everything. So
Right.
going back to your first 5 years, you said there were those struggles, right?
Oh yeah.
What were some of the things that you would really pinpoint on and say, this is something that I can actually say, this is why I was struggling right here. It wasn't so much that like husbandry was off, or like I just have a shit attitude towards customers. But this is why I'm not doing as good as I could have done.
Yeah, so one answer, like the first answer is money. I wasn't putting enough money just in the animals to like really like make this like super lucrative, right? Like we were doing okay, but not significant income. That's the easy answer. Really, the biggest struggle I actually had, we had a situation years and years and years and years and years ago, probably 2016 or so now. Um, we let somebody into our facility. They brought mites into the facility. Mites, helped spread RIs, and we had a massive, just like we lost, like 50% of our collection. It was really like it was bad. It was really bad. Like we almost quit. I say we, like, no, Andre wasn't a part of this at that point. It was my wife and I, and I I I struggled a lot to get off the ground from that point, because it was like, you'd spend all this time raising these animals and everything was just starting to get rolling, and then, this person comes in, they bring mites, and you're like, "Oh, mites aren't that bad," and then all of a sudden, like, one snake gets an RI, and you're like, "Oh, fuck. Okay." And then the next snake, and within like a week, you have like 15 of your 40 breeder females have RIs, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? And it just spiraled so fast. And it was just absolutely devastating. And I just didn't know if we were going to go on. And then, you know, so all of that happens. We end up euthanizing, a large swath of our collection because you don't know what's going on and you're just struggling, right? And doing everything you can. And then, the next couple of years, you're trying to get traction back after that, and you just can't fucking get it to go, right? And I just felt like if there was a banana peel to be found, I was gonna step on it and like just slide. And what that banana peel was, it seemed to vary like so often, right? It was always like stupid shit. You'd be like, I had a tree fucking well, actually, we sorry, bringing back some PTSD here. We found out that the building that we had our animals in, the previous owners of the house, when they were re-shingling the roof, instead of removing the shingles like they were supposed to, they had put 5 layers of shingles on this roof, and so that caused a little pool of water. And so then the 4x8 sheet of wood on the roof had completely rotted out. So then we had to move all of our animals into our house. And for anybody that's had to move animals knows that can throw off the breeding cycle. So we bring all of our fucking animals into our house while we're replacing and remodeling this whole building. We have tortoises in our house too at that point who decide to rip a toilet out of the floor. That's awesome. Things are going great. Have a terrible season because of that. Get the animals moved back in. And then we, have a tree fucking fall on the building and crush it again, animals right back inside. And you're just like, we have this stuff, right? And so I'm just drowning because in my mind, I'm like, how do we make this work? I've invested so much time and effort, and I just don't know. And my wife is, she's dealing with, having to help manage me emotionally while she's struggling at work as well. And, it's like things are going wrong, right? So there's actually this point where I basically was like, we've tried to do it this way, it's not working. And so June of I think it was 2019. I basically I told my wife, I was like, look, this isn't working. I think we need to figure some shit out or we need to stop. And so I told her, I was like, look, here's what I have. I have these like 14, 15 clown females with different genes and things like that. I said, and this was like right after the Pompeii had been really hot. And I was like, look, there's a really, really hype gene right now. If Justin has the right male, I think we don't worry about price. We just buy it. And if it works and I make, X amount of dollars, I think I said if we make like $50,000 off of that one male, right? Just from his offspring, I said, we'll stay in this. And if we don't, we're done. And that was literally like, that moment was for me, like, that was the watershed moment, right? That was this is going to work or I'm moving on. Like because I can't get it to work because it was the first time in my life where I had really applied myself to something and just couldn't get that traction. So I went to Justin and I was like, hey man, do you have any males that fit this criteria? And he's like, yeah, I have this firefly leopard spot nose red stripe het clown breeder male. He's like, it's yours for like 8K. And I was like, done. Not even a question. I didn't even hesitate. And it worked out. And here we are today. So yeah, man, like I said, I just found like every pin in a peel. It felt like it was, struggles from like buildings getting destroyed. Uh, I had a psychotic rat one time in one of my tubs that like I put it in. It was in for like 15 minutes and like gnawed the tail off of one of my snakes literally within like 15 minutes. Like shit like that. These just like it's not devastating and it sucks and it's frustrating, but you're like, what the fuck? Like honestly. So it was stuff like that. And then, things got better, in like 2019. Then of course, COVID kind of, was shitty for a lot of people, but it helped the snake industry as a whole. Like, it was much easier to sell stuff and kind
Absolutely.
of rolled from there.
So you've essentially worked it as a partnership the
Yeah.
entire time, but it was more you and your wife, and you guys were divvying up stuff. How or, how do you want to explain that? She was
Yeah.
saying it's okay, and you were doing all the work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So she helped wash tubs. My wife is terrified of snakes. Um,
still to
completely.
this day.
Still to this day. Ironic because I proposed to her in front of a 30-foot Burmese, so she should have known what she was getting into. Just like to say that now. But yeah, so she has a really like deep-rooted fear of snakes, and like we've gotten to where like she'll touch them occasionally. If I need help with something and like there's no other option or Andre's not around, like she will, but it's a struggle for her. I mean, she's a lot better than she used to be. Um, she'll work her ass off though, like helping, work on the building or washing tubs, like anything that doesn't involve her directly interacting with a snake, she's right there. Yeah, she allowed a lot of this to happen. She gave me a lot of leeway. She was, we've been together since we were 16 years old. So she saw the Pokemon cards and the sports cards and the income that we made, and that's what we lived off of for years. So like I think I built up some equity there with like showing I could do a business and I could run it, and like if I had the drive and the passion. And so she gave me a lot of leash to do stuff, and she still does. She still tolerates a lot. So when I say we, like it was more that like she let me run the business, but like she let me do it. Like if at any
Right, right,
point she
right.
had been like, "This ain't gonna work, buddy," like we would have had a real conversation. But like it's tough to really like, she does come first. So um,
How'd that conversation kind of come about when you told her, "Hey, like this is make or break"? Like you were talking about it earlier, but
yeah,
how that conversation kind of come to? Like, how'd you approach her and be like, "This is what I want to do,"
yeah,
but
yeah.
like you've supported me through all this, but this is my break point. So either it works or it doesn't.
Uh, we were we were grilling. I this conversation, I, honestly, like I remember so vividly. We were grilling, and I walked out onto the back porch and I sat down, and I can't remember. I don't remember the exact like what initiated it. Something that happened with one of the females, like either a a slug, like something slugged out. I can't remember the exact moment, but I was just like, I remember telling her, I'm like, I keep finding banana peels. And she was like, "You are pretty good at that." And I was like, "I know. They don't understand why." And I was like, "Here's my thoughts." And I basically just laid out the plan. I was like, here is everything. Here's what the market, looks like on this stuff. I think this is what we should be able to make. I think this makes sense. What do you think? And she was like, "I'm gonna trust you on it. Like if, you know, it either works or it doesn't. We don't really have an option other than that at this point, right? Like there's no sense in like continuing to spin our wheels. So if it's gonna work out, great. And if it's not, then we need to move on and really focus in on, you know, other things. And fortunately, uh, snakes were not like an only avenue, right? Like if snakes had failed, I did have a good career to go into, right? And that's not necessarily what I wanted to do, but I think there was a lot of peace with her in the sense of like, if this fails, it doesn't completely screw us. It just means we go in a different direction and we pivot. And so I think that's kind of how that went down. And so we had that conversation and she was like, "Go for it. We have the money, let's do it." And that's what we did.
So where'd you learn kind of the business side of it versus just working it for yourself? So you've said you always wanted to be entrepreneurial,
Yeah.
but like where'd the knowledge behind all the business come from since you were so focused on science growing up?
Yeah, so there's a there's a good chunk of just the I learned a lot of business. So my granddad and my uncle and my mom, they're also all like, my granddad and uncle are self-made millionaires, and like like they're all very entrepreneurial and like created these massive, corporations and businesses. My mom, same mindset, very so like my mind just thought in a sense of business for whatever works. Like it like even with like the margins and like the money and the income and how to drive that with like Pokemon cards and sports cards, like all that just made sense. When it came to just like the actual like what do we call strategy or formal education, that happened while I was in grad school. So I went to school at the Medical College of Virginia, which is now VCU Health System or something. Anyway, so VCU had this program called Ventures, which essentially was um, like the startup oriented portion of the university. So like scientists and local like founders could go to the university. They have this idea, they can basically pitch it, and if the university felt it was something that could be commercialized, they would bring them into their incubators and things like that. And so when you start interacting with specialized fields, what you realize quickly is like you have your customer and your seller kind of sides, right? And when I say that, I mean like in this situation, like you'd have scientists and then you have business people. They speak very different languages, and a lot of times they don't have very similar likes dislikes either, right? Like the scientist likes one very specific aspect of doing this whole project, and the business person cares about another side. And so I was fortunate in that one of the people that I met while in grad school was someone similar to me, and they had interest both in business and science, and they had started a program to basically allow people like me to come in and act as an intermediary between business people and scientists. And so I started learning this role and learning, the business speak because I could vocalize and translate, between the two worlds. And so a lot of the formal education kind of jump started with that, and then kind of delving into it myself past that point. But really a lot of that came from VCU Ventures, and learning what it meant to actually like commercialize stuff and actually be like a true startup, and realizing that whether you're talking about a pharmaceutical company startup or a snake startup, uh, a lot of that is interchangeable. Like being a startup is being a startup. The process of finding what's your value proposition, who are your key partners, what are your pain points, all of those things. It's all the stuff that's intertwined, no matter what the business. Uh, it's funny, Chris asks on the 15 minutes of lame, why should people buy from you? And I always hated that question, uh, because it's actually hard to answer if you don't really think about it. Because the question, whether Chris realizes it or not, on a business level, is he's asking you what's your value proposition, which is actually the most important question in like starting a business. And it's hard to answer if you don't have a distinct answer. And I hated it more because it was like, why should someone buy from you? And my answer was never, there's not a good reason you should inherently buy from me. The snakes I work on, we all work with similar projects. We all work with similar, quality. I have perfectly fine customer service, but I don't think it's inherently any better than somebody else's. My pictures are just fine. But I always thought, like, for me, the question was more, what's my value proposition? And that was like, why my company will be successful is I'm good at networking, I'm good at the market analytics, things like that. And so whether Chris realized it or not, like, that's actually a really valuable question. It was always interesting to me, the way people would answer, because it told you really fast how they actually looked at their company. Ironic, because I think I answered it as shitty as humanly possible. But yeah, it is what it is. But that question always drove me crazy, and I was so bitter because I was the first one to go on his 15 minutes of lame, and I had no warning that that question was coming. And so I'm like, I don't fucking know. I take good. Fuck me. I don't know. So yeah, it was rough, to say the least.
And the funny thing about that whole show, like, and I didn't understand it at first, right?
Yeah.
Because I was in college, but I wasn't focused on business, and now I
Mm,
have a degree in business. But I was like, dude, you literally set someone up to write their entire business plan, their mission statement, their vision statement, everything
yeah.
that you need to present. And he's like, no, I'm not. And I was like, you're either inherently an unknown genius and you're trying to help everybody,
Yeah.
or you're just a straight dick. And he's gonna always say that he's just a straight dick, but I'm gonna
Oh
think
no, it's a
that
mix of
it's
both, my
right.
man. Dude,
Yeah,
Chris downplays. There's a lot going on there. He downplays it more than he should. There's a lot going on there.
100%.
And I mean, you don't get as to be where he is and as successful as he is in this industry without selling a goddamn snake as him, without, something going on there a little bit more than just being a dick. I mean,
Right.
was he just fucking with us? Yeah, of course. That's Chris. But there's still a lot of inherent intelligence to that question to ask why, because a lot of people don't ask why, and a lot of people don't have a good answer to that. And a lot of people think that, they're a lot further along than they actually are, and they think that they're businesses when they're really not. They're hobbies, and that's okay. Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But no, it is funny. I hated the question, but it's a really good question, and it's asked differently, like in startup incubators and things like that. The question becomes, what's your value proposition versus, why should somebody buy from you? So
Yeah. I mean, there's just so much to it, and I appreciate everything that he's done for this industry. I mean, for
yeah,
for a guy that went through everything he did and to
yeah.
stay with it and still share the love that he does for the industry is just outstanding. So, kudos
Oh,
to you, Chris.
absolutely, man. I'll tell you a quick story. 2015, I think. I'm at Daytona with my wife. I know really nobody in the hobby at this point. Like, I'm still relatively new. I'm trying to network and, do my thing. And I'm at Daytona, and I'm going up the elevators up to the conference room, and I see Justin Kabilka and Chris Eaton sitting at this fountain talking. And I'm going up this elevator with my wife. I'm like, oh my God, that's Chris Eaton and Justin. And she was like, okay, go say hi. I'm like, oh, I can't talk to them. No, they won't want to talk to me. And she's like, are you fanboying right now? I'm like, no, but yeah, a little bit. And she's like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Go talk to them. I was like, absolutely not. And so I didn't actually talk to them. And it's really ironic now because I consider them both really close friends. But it's like seen in that moment, like, no, I can't talk to them. Like, they don't care about me.
And that is the comment of the night, and that
There
is
it
going to
is.
stay there because that's what we deserve, and we love you, brother.
We love you, Chris.
So you went through that 5 years, and
Yeah.
there was that trial by fire,
A
and
little bit,
you
yeah.
found your way through.
Yeah.
What made you decide that I'm going to amplify it up from what I have now, build everything back, and go full out and turn this into what it was before the merger into the
Yeah.
partnership?
So um so I don't how do I say this? I'm hard-headed. I'm stubborn and I don't like to fail. I don't The reason I have a PhD is not because I'm inherently smart. Like I meet a minimum threshold of intelligence to get into a program, but past that I was never the smartest person in any room I was in, not even close. But I worked harder than 90% of the people. Because in my mind, like I had to be successful and I'm so competitive that like I couldn't sleep at night if I knew that one of my friends was doing better than me, which in itself is like a major toxic trait, but it is what it is. Um, and so for me, like the moment we got some traction going, in my mind, the only way to be the only way for this to be successful in my mind was to grow it and create this really big business that I could be proud of and like, show my family and show my friends and be like, I did this. And so it's just a lot of it's work ethic. Like I said, I'm I'm not dumb, but I'm not crazy intelligent. I'm not as good. I'm not as creative as some people. I'm not as good at marketing as people. Um, but I have zero issues working a shit ton of hours if that's what it takes to be successful. And so I think that drive and time spent is far and away the most valuable trait that drove me to where we are before the merger and even now.
Okay, I like that, man. It's a wonderful perspective on it. So I'm gonna try to draw out some free consulting, if you
Yes.
will,
Yeah, let's do it.
for those, so that we get some inherent value for
I
anyone that
love
wants
it. Let's
to
do
listen.
it. I
Um,
hope this works out.
Partnerships. It
Yeah.
is probably one of the most hated things in this industry, but inherently, it's also one of the things most needed in this industry to really take yourself to that next level, especially for those starting out, right?
Yeah.
Um, what were some of the partnerships that you kind of worked with, or things that you learned along your early years before you merged with Andre and decided to do your current partnership, that you would tell people to really look at or to see as kind of a red flag and definitely stay away from?
Oh, oh man. See, the problem is I'm really good at ignoring red flags. Um,
I have one that is constantly going off in the chat that says talk show in it. So
yeah,
I'm trying to
I love it.
avoid this
I
thing.
love it. Um, I think so. I'll talk on what Andre and I did well, and it's boundaries. We have distinct roles within the business. We also came up with a way to solve a dispute if we had one. I think you have to have that if you're going to be in a situation where there's more than one person involved. You have to have a clear, and it needs to be decided before there's a problem. Um, you know, just for full transparency, we have escape clauses in our bylaws. So every set amount of years, Andre and I can sit down and say this isn't working, we need to split up, and we have that. And the reason for that was we don't want to feel trapped. But like it's not just a simple like you get to leave. Like there's a lot involved with that, and all of that has been spelled out very clearly while we're both still in a good mood, right? Because if something goes wrong and there's a fight, whatever, clear heads never are good at negotiating. So I think there needs to be clear boundaries and things set up before things go wrong. If you're in a situation where there's only two parties or just an even number of parties, you need to have a third person, whether they have equity in the company doesn't matter. Set it up where they're like a board member, where they can come in and be like, hey, I side with this person or this person, right? So that you have a way to settle disputes that everyone agrees with up front. Um, Previous to, our merger, things that kind of trained me and prepped me for our merger, I would do breeder loans with people, and I was always very big on like paperwork and contracts and things like that. Um, if I was going to do a breeder loan, like I said, I ignored red flags really early on, and I was really bad at that. And I had some breeder loans go really poorly. And so looking back on those, though, I learned a lot in the sense of like when people get really pushy and or like almost feel desperate to make a deal happen, it's okay to walk away. Like that's when you should. Don't send an animal to somebody that's begging you to send an animal to them. They're desperate. That generally doesn't work out. It's never worked out well for me personally. What other things with partnerships? Communication. If you can't have a conversation with someone and be totally honest, you shouldn't be a partner with them.
What if you can't get them to stop talking?
I
That's
mean,
why his name's Talk Show. I'm ragging on my buddy. Sorry, I threw you off.
If you can't get him to stop talking, you know what? You got to figure out how you're going to communicate with him. That's the deal. Because Andre would tell you I don't stop talking. Ironic because he doesn't talk. So it's that's also what works well for us. Our personalities are very polar opposite. We're very different. So I think being able to communicate and not being afraid to communicate, like it's hard. And hard sometimes conversations suck to have, like it's just inherent. You're going to have conversations where both of you disagree, and you got to figure out how you're going to resolve those. Learning to pick and choose battles is also a really important thing. There are definitely mountains that I'm willing to die on, and there's mountains I just don't care. Like it bugs me, but it's not one that I'm going to fight over, right? You just kind of have to learn to deal with stuff like that. I think honestly, like when you're talking about a partnership in a business, it's a lot like a marriage. There's give and take. It's going to take a lot of effort some days, and some days it's going to be super easy. And so a lot of things that work in relationships, they translate very clearly to the business side, with the exception of, and I guess maybe this is marriage too on some level, like documentation. I'm not saying everybody needs a prenup. I don't have one,
Get a
but
prenup.
like, maybe it would help. Like, I wonder, like on some level, if like not like a prenup in the sense of like money and all that stuff, but just like an understanding of if things go wrong, this is how we settle it while things are going well. That feels like a better thing than how we do it now, right? Where when we're having a divorce, it's just two angry, bitter, pissed off people fighting over who gets a sofa. Like fucking A. Um, you know, so like maybe we do, like hindsight, maybe in relationships we need a little more, upfront stuff. But then of course there's the, well, if you have that, are you setting it up to fail? And I don't know. Anyway, that's above my pay grade for that portion of it. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. I don't
No,
know.
for sure, for sure.
Okay.
There's definitely, I think there's so many aspects of an actual partnership. Much like you said, it's very much so like a marriage. There's give and take, and there's jealous spouses, and
Yeah.
however you want to put it. Like that was my way of putting it in the
Yeah,
sense of,
absolutely. No, you're not
hey, maybe
wrong.
you're doing a little bit better than your partner, and they take note of that, or
Uh,
just
a-
things of that nature.
Absolutely. And I think they're too, like, if I could tell anybody one thing, like self-awareness is so important through all of this. There's things that, I will never tell him. Well, I would if he asked, but there's things that Andre does that I'm like, I don't know if that's the best way. But at the same time, I know there are things that I do that he doesn't think is the best way. And I have to have enough self-awareness to be like, you know what? He's letting this go. I need to let it go. And it goes back to those are the mountains that aren't worth fighting over. Like we we both were successful before we merged, and there's definitely been an understanding and like some give and take of having to be like, hey, we were successful before, we're doing well now. Like, and my wife actually made a comment a couple days ago when I was talking about how things were going, and she's like, I figured it was going to take a year or two before y'all really synced up. She's like, it's been like 5 months and y'all are doing way better than I thought. So she's like, I think it's gonna be okay. And I'm like, oh, all right, then let's roll with it, so yeah.
Okay. What are some of the things that you'd say sensing the merger between you two that have really given you the opportunity to elevate yourself to that next echelon? Because by yourself, I think very much so in myself with your sales and things like that, you were one of the higher breeders that we knew of in the industry at the time. But this merger has given you the opportunity to really jump into one of the
Yeah.
top breeders there is.
Yeah. So I'm a I'm a big proponent of having people around me that are really good at stuff that I suck at. And so a lot of Andre's strengths are my weaknesses. And so what that allows us to do is focus more heavily on what we're really good at and ramp those aspects up. And a lot of that is not stuff that inherently the customer is going to directly see, but it's what helps our business be successful specifically. Whether that is something as simple as like inventory management and tying our entire inventory system into like an accounting system as well, to where we can, keep track of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of animals and sales and everything like that fairly automated. That's a lot of back end work that I can go in and code, and I did, that has made everything more efficient, so that you know Andre and I have sold almost 160 animals since February 28th. It's a good chunk of animals, and if you don't have a good back end to help keep track of all of that and keep track of payment plans and shipping and all that stuff, things can spiral quickly. And when things start spiraling, then customers start getting upset, and that's where things go downhill. And so like some of those aspects, him coming in and taking over like direct customer sales and helping with animals, allowed me to step back and fill out, and code this whole back end area, so that now he can, sell an animal, go into a sheet, put in a price, and 14 other sheets are all auto updated, so that we have this end product and we know, okay, this animal has now been paid for and it's being shipped out on X date, and the weather is this temp for that date supposedly, and then have the system check back up on stuff. So I think that's been what is going to allow us, and has allowed us and will allow us to continue to be successful, is the efficiencies that we can do. um, Merging the collections also gave us a lot more. Fortunately, Andre and I had fairly distinct projects. There was some overlap when it came to like Desert Ghost Clown and Desert Ghost Pied and things like that. But my collection was very Dreamsicle, Ultramel. Uh, I guess, yeah, mainly it was Dreamsicle, Ultramel heavy. I had Desert Ghost stuff. I had Desert Ghost Pied stuff, and Andre had like very Desert Ghost heavy. And then he had quite a few other like niche projects that are turning out to be really cool. And so the collections merged fairly nicely. I also had Sunset and things like that. And so it merged nicely. So now we're able to intermix all of these projects, fairly seamlessly. And that in itself gives us this huge jump start on, quadruple recessives. We have multiple clutches in the incubator for quadruple recessive stuff. We have, we're cutting eggs tomorrow for our Patreon, for triple recessive hatchlings. Like all of that stuff happened because of the merger. It just gave us a lot more. It also allowed us to save money in that Andre and I were starting to buy similar animals. And, we were competing with each other, which kind of sucks when you're constantly fighting with a friend over stuff and you don't really want to talk about specific animals you're going to pick up because you're afraid he might go get them, which, that's just part of business.
Okay,
But
hold on. Sorry, not to break this up. Was there ever an animal where like you kind of let it slip and Andre grabbed it before you did, or vice versa, where it's
no, because we wouldn't talk about it. No, we were very, um, I, I there was a specific, I can think of one very, very specific moment where Andre was getting an animal, and I was like, "What is it?" And he's like, "I can't tell you." And I'm like, and this was like, we'd been friends for like 6 years at this point. And he's like, "I can't tell you." And I'm like, "Why the fuck not?" And he's like, "I not until I have it in my hands." And I'm like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me right now?" Like I remember thinking that, and then, like it makes sense. Like there is that inherent competition. Like I get it. No, there was never, as far as I know, like there was never an animal that he got to first, or I got to first. There were definitely animals that so I bought a pastel sunset het hypo posset pied male. Posset pied. And it was one of those things where I was talking to him about it, and he was like, if you don't buy it, I'm going to. Like, so we did have some moments like that where he was made it very clear, like, you have 30 seconds to make a decision or I'm sending a message. There was a female one time that, we were in a group chat with another friend, and the friend posted it, and I was kind of hemming and hawing on price. And Andre texted me and was like, you need to decide now, because if you don't, I am. And so, like, we had some moments like that, but never where like there was just like he scooped me or I scooped him, and there was some bitterness there. So we avoided that for sure. Fortunately, that would have been fun.
I think that makes it more. How do I want to put this? More like that child competitiveness that you get, right? And
Yeah.
it's like it almost drives you to want to do more every time, just to see, well, if because honestly, like if I had heard that from one of my friends, I would have been like, okay, do it. But if you do it, I'm just gonna take it out of your facility. Or something stupid, right? Like
Yeah.
I'll let you
Yeah.
pay for it, but I'm gonna use it.
I'm gonna use it.
Um
Yeah. That's funny.
what's
Yeah.
the oh sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. What?
I awkward pauses. I was
Yes.
gonna go into something and I blanked once I stopped myself.
Oh God. All right, let's get there.
Um
I said yeah. You
so
said
this merger has given you the opportunity to really jump into a lot of other aspects
uh-huh.
over the last, I would say, year and a half or year. I guess a
Yeah, so
year,
the
right?
so so
Year and a
so the
half.
merger officially happened in February. We were working on, like, there was a lot of buildup before the announcement. So we started this whole process back in October. So what, 7, 8 months, give or take? No, 9 months. Jesus. Yeah, 9 months. So almost a year. We'll call it a year. Let's go with a year. Yeah, perfect. We got there.
Close enough.
Yeah,
Close.
close enough. Yeah, it's fine.
But you've had the opportunity to jump into other things as well besides just breeding,
Yeah.
because even though you didn't unveil this, like if you listen to or had the opportunity to talk to you or listen to other podcasts where you may have said this before, um, this was in the works for a long time, but you had the opportunity to really dive into other stuff because you knew part of that would come out, right? Like you're with the genetics. You were a part of RGI when it first started and kind of
So
set that up.
I was never an employee. I was never a part of RGI. I worked with Ben. So the ball python genotyping project, which the genetic testing, it's called genotyping, is what we call it in the science world, for those who don't know. So somebody had messaged, actually, I say somebody, it was Andre. Andre messaged me and was like, hey, RGI, which at the time I only knew of because they did colubrid sex testing. They said RGI is starting to offer the genetic tests that you're doing. Is prior to RGI offering those genetic tests, there was a lab up in Michigan, Eastern Michigan University, with Hannah Seidel. She's actually the one that developed the initial lavender albino ultramel. And then there's a group in Canada, ball python genetics or something, that did piebaldism. And so those initial tests are the ones that RGI started, initially offering. And so Andre tells me about it. I'm stoked because I had spent a lot of time looking into this, and the pricing just didn't make sense prior to like this year, basically. And so I reached out to Ben immediately and I was like, hey, we need to talk. Like, y'all are doing stuff, I'm doing stuff, we need to talk. So I reached out to them. Ben and I started a relationship. Um, we we started working on stuff together, but I wouldn't inherently say that anything that I was doing uh, was essential to making them successful. So I helped them with stuff and it helped speed up the process for them, but that was about it. Did I lose you? Are you gone? Oh, he's
No,
back.
I'm here. I had to run and grab something really
No,
quick.
you're good. I was like, am I just talking to the universe now? Is this like
Yes,
when my phone gets
you're talking to
disconnected
your
and I think
creator.
my creator, perfect. So I helped them with stuff early on. I was never a part of the company. It was
It's funny you
at
said phone because I literally forgot to plug in my computer. That's why I got around to it.
um, at best, I would say I was consulting for them, and we worked on stuff together and helped speed up the process to get them jump started for when they discovered, the clown trait. Um, and now they've moved into Desert Ghost, and I know they're working on some other stuff as well. But um, it, the merger has freed me up, freed up time for me to do my own genetic testing. I can do anything that's publicly available. So anything that the universities develop, that all gets published and is publicly available. Um, I have, access to equipment and the ability to buy supplies and things like that through my university jobs. So I can run I run all of our tests except for, clown in lab ourselves. So it allows me time to do stuff like that. And, I'll run samples for friends and things like that if they need stuff turned around pretty quick. But, so it does allow me some more time to do stuff like that instead of having to, answer legions of customer emails and things like that.
Nice. And then you also, when did you guys decide to really dive into consulting as well? And what gave you the drive to kind of do that? Because that's a really big step in my eyes. Like, because you're saying that you now understand the market to a point where you're going to be able to help people.
Yeah. Oof. You're almost asking like, why do I think I can do that? And I love
I
that.
know. Well,
No, it's a reasonable question. I,
I am. What, Patrick? Why
why
should we
listen to me?
come to you for
Because
consulting?
financially we're very successful and there's a reason for that. Um, that's why. What initiated that? It was actually JT Tomlinson.
Okay.
JT and I were talking about some ReptoChip stuff and competitor stuff, and I was, just throwing out business terms like pivot and circle back and fun stuff. And anyway, we were having a good conversation, and we started talking about snakes at one point and really like diving in. And he was like, "Man, you should really like start offering like consulting." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like snake people aren't going to pay for that shit?" And he's like, "No, like you really should." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And so he actually asked me to fly down to his facility and like basically go through the entire collection and do like a proper like consultation, tell him what he should keep, what he should buy, what he should breed, like basically, set him up. And at the end of it, like it was a lot of fun and ended up being, I think, beneficial for him. And he was in heaven with it. And I was like, well, if JT's happy. I mean, I guess we can kind of expand it past that point. And the more I talked to people, the more I realized it was something that people actually would be interested in. And then I kind of had this, this moment where I was thinking about it and I was like, Andre's really good at the snake vision side. Like he has some magic crystal ball where he does a good job for the most part on like looking at projects and being like, I think this is a good way to go. And you kind of look at Andre's track record specifically, and he produced pastel desert ghost clown pies within like 6 years. Like just he saw the perfect path and just got there, and he's just very good at that. And so I was like, I think that's an aspect he could bring to the table. And then I can basically just do the business side and explain like the economics behind why, what Andre's, vision is makes sense. Right. And
Yeah.
so that's what kind of initiated that, I went to Andre's like, look, like, I think we should do this together. We actually before the merge, this was actually even before the merger, and we were going to call the company ReptoGrowth, and it was going to be this thing where I was like, you're going to do the snakes, I'm going to do the business. Basically, you go through, evaluate the collection, give me your cliff notes, and then I'll take that and like build an economic plan based off of it. And then I'll sit down with the customer and explain everything to them in a way that I think they'll understand. And that kind of goes back to what I was doing at VCU, where I was this go between the business and the scientists. It's the same role, just a different topic. Um, and so we started doing that, and people seemed very pleased. Um, if nothing else, at least with the information I was giving them. Everything we give people, obviously it's their decision on what they want to do with it, right? Like if you choose to implement it, that's great. If you choose not to, I understand. Um, what I'm comfortable saying is 99% of what we're presenting is going to be data driven. It's going to be based off of our experiences and based off what we see the market right now, and data that I've collected, because I've been collecting morph market data, since its inception. Going on and manually just fucking copying and pasting goddamn listings, into spreadsheets and shit like that, just so I have pricings per year and things like that, so we can kind of try and build these trends and market evaluations. And so, I have all of this data, and so then I can go and be like, hey, like these are what projects look like over time. These are projects that are hot. You can look at trends and be like, here is this and this, like this is a direction you should go. Um, and what we really started seeing were a lot of people, they struggled seeing past like 3 years down the road. It was like people really did a good job at like next year and like making stuff to make for the next year or the year after. But if you ask them, okay, where does this project go in 3 years or 5 years? There was no, like they didn't immediately get there. And so when I would be like, okay, well, what animal do you want to make, right? And you ask the person that, and they tell you, I'm like, okay, how are you going to make that? And they kind of freeze up, and you're like, okay, what's it going to take to make that? And you start going down that path with them, right? And explaining like, maybe this is what you need, maybe this is what you need. And they're like, well, I can't afford that. And you're like, well, why not? And they're like, well, it's too expensive. I'm like, but is it? Like, is it? Like, do you know? And then you start finding people don't actually know the market on stuff, right? Or they assume it's going to, so loose example, right? So if you want to make the DG hypo clown pipe that Justin just hatched, right? Obviously, it's going to be a lot of work. It's probably 7 to 10 years of work, but like the foundation for starting that project doesn't have to be inherently expensive, right? You can go get a DG hypo male for probably $1,000 right now, and you could get multiple clown pied females for anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 right now, probably, right? And so for like $7,000, $8,000, you can build a nice little project specifically for that. And I know that's not cheap, but when you think about building the foundation for a
Oh, yeah.
quadruple recessive project, it's not that expensive. You could also kind of do maybe a little bit inverse, right? And instead go with like maybe get like 4 or 5 hypopide females and then one like DG clown, right? And so then like you get a DG clown for like 4 to 5K right now. You get the 4 to 5 hypopide females for 400, maybe $500 a piece. And now you're still in that $8,000 price range, which you're kind of inverse, right? And so, you know, people don't inherently start jumping down that, right? Or you can be like, you can maybe go this path, this path. And so when you have those conversations with people, people all of a sudden are like, oh, well, that's not as like scary as I thought it was going to be. They're
Right.
like, no, to start this project, I need like $50,000. Like, oh, you really don't. Like for a modest investment, a decent. I shouldn't say modest. Like I know $8,000 is a lot of money, but like for an investment in a project that is going to last you 10 years probably, and you'll make money the whole way down that process, because it's like even if you're breeding a quadruple het to quadruple het, you're going to hatch stuff that you can sell. And now that we have genetic testing, all of those genes can be tested for. So now you're not even having to worry about selling pos hets really, because everything is tested for. And so it's stuff like that. And it's, I can say it's the success we've had makes us comfortable sharing this stuff. But I don't think any of it is like this magic secret sauce. I think um Andres called it one time. He's like, he hates calling it like common sense, but to him it is. Like to him it just makes sense. And I know that it doesn't just inherently make sense to everyone. But I think most people when they hear it, they're like, holy fuck, that's a good point. I've had multiple people tell me like after looking through their collection and giving my opinion, and they come back or they call me on the phone, they're like, I didn't see it before, but like holy fuck. Like you're right, there is a spectacular amount of butter and I have no way to make like one person had told me like, they were wanting to make triple and quadruple recessives, and I was like, how are you gonna do that? You don't have a single double recessive female and you have like one double recessive male. So how are we making quadruples? And he was like, whoa. I was like, and it's just simple stuff like that, right? That sometimes you just need a second set of eyes to look something over to give an opinion. And sometimes it's not even that you couldn't have got there yourself. It just speeds up getting there, you know? And so that's kind of what we do.
So what would you say is kind of like your go-to customer at this point, or even what would be like the entry level customer, right? Like what are we kind of looking at as far as goals or even collection size that
For the
we're going to try to
consulting or just
consult
like
with
snake sales? For the
for,
consulting or the snake sales?
for the consulting?
Oh, I honestly, the sooner the better for people, if I'm being honest. I think the sooner people can get, and that's not inherently, I'm not saying like come to me for consulting. I'm saying you can come to us and I will happily take your money and give you what I think is good advice. But finding someone that's been really, really successful, not someone that you think is successful, but like someone that actually is successful and helping them guide your collection. I think the sooner the better. So like you look at Miguel, right? Miguel started off a little touchy, but then he met up with Justin, and Justin gave him advice, and Miguel followed to a T. And that's why Miguel, like, it's part. I shouldn't say that's why. That's part of Miguel's success. When you talk to a lot of the people that have been successful, they connected with someone better than them, and they listened to that advice, and it helped a lot. Um, so like, I did a consulting job, or I shouldn't say we did a consulting job last week for somebody that they haven't even produced their first clutch yet. But like we went through their collection, we were like, hey, things are going well, but like, you really need to add like this or this or this. I wouldn't sell anything yet, blah, 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 and kind of go through and help set them up for the future. We had an individual connect with us at Tinley, and they basically are like, we probably have 100 males. And I'm like, well, you need to sell 90 of them. Like, we can sit
Right.
down and help. Like, and so I think the earlier you can connect with a service that can help you, that has a track record and can help you be successful, the better, because you can waste a lot of time spinning your wheels early on in the process.
Okay. So for us to kind of break it down, whatever you're willing to divulge, of course.
Hmm.
What's like your basic package, and kind of what's the
So
cost that we're looking at?
yeah, so it all comes down. It's an hourly rate. It comes down to a
Okay.
$500 an hour. I know that sounds like a lot to people, but understand, like, in the consulting world, I was charging like, over $1,000 an hour. So it's actually, the value there, I promise, is worth it. Most jobs that we do take us between 30 minutes and an hour for Andre and I to do our part. There's then like a phone call that we do afterward, that I do afterwards, that generally takes another 30 minutes to an hour. We don't charge for that portion. We're just charging for the moment that we're working on stuff. I've never had a job go over $500 to this point. We've done collections as many as 100 animals. It really just depends on what people are looking for. If you want like, a full blown like breeder plan where we're going to go through everything, and you've got, 100 breeder females, like, uh, it's just going to take time, and then we probably will like figure out exactly how much time it's going to take. But we've done jobs where it's like 50 to 75 animals, and it generally takes us like 45 minutes, and so it's like $300-400 at that point. And we'll go through, we look at the complete collection, we'll give you our feelings on breeder plans, why, and we'll explain why we think those animals should be paired up. We try and be as thorough as possible. We also try and give multiple options. So, like, we ask the people before we start the process, like, what projects do you care about? What's your goals? Is this something you want to be like a hobby, a business? If it's going to be a business, what income level are you, wanting to aspire to make? We ask all of that stuff, so that then when we like build the breeder plans, we can have multiple options, right? Like, we'll have this male, and we're like, okay, this is your best male. These are the primary females we would try and hit with this male, but like, here's some secondary options as well, right? Or we go down and be like, so here's a project we really like. We know not everybody else may love this project, so like, here's some other options you can mix and match. So we try and give variety so people understand, like, they're not just seeing one viewpoint. We always do our best to go through and look at what we think people should prune from the collections. It's kind of, it's relatively easy to do that and just be like, you should move this, you should move this, you should move this. But we also try our best to find like the best animals that we think you should buy as well. Um, and we'll ask, what's your budget beforehand, and 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 we do our best to not try and like just sell our own animals. Like I don't want people to feel like our answers are biased. Um, in that we're only telling you this to sell an animal. Very rarely do we sell our own animals through
Give
this
me
process.
$500 and then
Yeah,
here's a $5,000 snake that would work perfectly into your collection.
exactly. I'm not gonna say it's never happened. There's definitely been moments where we look through a person's collection and I'm like, this is the perfect animal for you. I have it. I will give you a good price on it, like blah blah blah. But like there has to be a lot of justification behind me to start that pitch before I'm just going to start trying to hawk my own animals, right? So yeah, man.
uh, so let's kind of dive into some of y'all's projects. Like we
Yeah.
talk to the people and we let them know about your consulting,
Yeah.
your come up, and why you're tried and tested. Oh my gosh, what am I doing right now? What's some of the projects that really has you excited this year and kind of moving forward now that you guys have done your merger?
I'm so excited to hatch pastels. God, I'm so stoked. It's gonna be a game changer, boys. No, seriously. Okay, so uh we have a new gene. I haven't actually talked about this at all. In 36 days, give or take, we will know if it's truly a new gene or if it's something that is just happens to be a really crazy allelic combination between two genes. I think it's a new gene. For all those watching right now, I will be posting a picture of it on Instagram. What is today? Saturday. So I'll post it Monday so y'all can see it. It's cool. It's really cool. It randomly popped up. So I'm really, really, really excited to see if this is actually something new. But that doesn't really answer your question. What projects? Specific projects we're really stoked about.
Tell the people that are too cheap to pay $500 what they need to spend their money in.
Hypo Sunset Clown Pieds. We're really excited to start that project. So we've got some pairings, and I think we have one or two ovulation. We have one like female close to an ovulation, I think, for that project. Xanthic DG, Hypo Clown Pied, a lot of Hypo Clown Pied stuff. Ultra Clown stuff. We have eggs on the ground right now. I think they hatch in the next couple of weeks to make hopefully Cypress Ultra Clowns, and then also like Red Stripe Fire Batman Ultra Clowns. So I'm really really stoked about the Ultra Clown project stuff. Trojan
I
Clown.
might have to piggyback off of that.
Oh yeah, man. It's
Not for Ultramel though.
yeah.
On the other side of the T positive, but
The Monarch
I
side. Yeah, it's
definitely
okay.
look at how stuff interplays on
Yeah,
Ultramel
yeah,
and kind of take my vision of what it's going to do in Monarch.
yeah. No, that's perfect. I love it. Yeah. Trojan Clown and stuff. Trojan Pied stuff. Trojans is a big sleeper gene. It's crazy nice what it does. People are sleeping heavy on it. So we have some really really cool pairings that Andre specifically told me I couldn't talk about tonight. But y'all will see them in like the next few months when they hatch. It'll be a big deal. We'll I shouldn't say I know it'll be a big deal, but I'm going to be shocked if it's not a big deal. Because I think they're going to look really good. What other cool stuff? Jaguar clown stuff. We have some clutches for some Jaguar clowns that are going to be
I
cool.
really like the Jaguar
Yeah,
stuff.
I was
Like
really excited with Justin's at Tinley, whatever that I can't. It was like a red stripe fire something Jaguar clown. I was pretty excited. Like I was talking to Chase the day before they, were coming up, and he's like, "Dude, you're gonna be excited to see we're bringing some cool Jaguar stuff." And I was like, "Sweet." Um, let's see. Oh, Lace Clown Pied. That is, dude. A a little salty. Justin beat me to it. I was like right there. I was like right there, and I just couldn't hit the odds. So we have Lace Clown Pied stuff. I'm really stoked about. And then next season we'll have quite a few shots at White Lace Clown Pied stuff. So I'm really excited about that. And then we have a legion of Desert Ghost Clown and Desert Ghost Clown Pied and Desert Ghost Pied combo things that Andre's been, building and workshopping for years, and a lot of that's coming to fruition now. So we'll have some really, really cool Desert Ghost combo stuff. Trying to think what else. Yeah, Dreamsicle
So
stuff. We'll have some cool Dreamsicle stuff. That project's taken a beating this past year. I was kind of surprised how fast it kind of dropped. Did not really see the dramatic drop that it had, but it happens.
I
It's been
think it's
around for a
hard,
while.
man. Like that's as beautiful as every one of those snakes are. And I will
Yeah,
never take anything away from their appearance.
yeah.
There's just so many shades of orange.
No,
And
dude,
you
you're
can
you're not
only
wrong.
make so many shades.
No, no, you're not wrong at all, and I think that's a big part of it, right? Like even the nicest dreamsicles, I think blackhead dreamsicles are some of the nicest dreamsicles available. They look spectacular. But like I don't know how much more we can really add to it. And maybe there's some naivete there and I'm sure somebody is going to hit that gene like kind of what happened with Inchi, right? Like Inchi kind of came out of I shouldn't say it came out of nowhere. Like it did similar stuff in albino, but just like it took a hot second to get there in lavender, right? But like it's going to take something like that to really blow Dreamsicle up again. But there's some cool stuff. I mean, we have a lot of it. I'm cutting a clutch tomorrow, maybe Monday for Lavender Clown Pieds. So like really like I love that project. It was one of my favorite projects when it came in. So like there's a lot of legs I think still
And I
to it,
think
but it's
that'll do a lot, man. Like
I hope
I
so. I
honestly
said we
do.
have yeah, I hope so. We have blackhead, yellow belly, and leopard in the pairing as well. So like I think those are all genes that'll go well with it as well. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like at the end of the day, you're not wrong though. Like there's only so many shades
Well,
of orange.
and
You're not shitting on it, man.
to
I
be
love
fair, I was gentle about it. I was
no
like,
no.
I love dreamsicles, but
Yeah, I get it.
I'm
I
just tired of
love
orange and white.
I this is my same argument with the Xanthic Desert Ghost clown stuff, right? There's only so many shades of white and gray and silver.
Oh god.
They're beautiful snakes, but there is a inherent limiting part to those projects because of what you're playing with. So until we find genes that can affect that color palette, like Inchi does with lavender albino, until you find those genes that can alter the color palettes that we play with within it, you're limited for sure. And that's I guarantee that's why Dreamsicle has taken as big of a hit as it has. Because like we're gonna hatch out GHI dreamsicles in the next couple of months, and they're gonna look great. But are they gonna look infinitely better than a dreamsicle? Probably not. And that's okay. Like it is
And
what it is.
that hurts for you to say that because
I think it's gonna look great. Dude.
okay.
I am ecstatic. We have a shot at blackhead, yellow belly, GHI, Mojave dreamsicles this year. I think it's gonna be a cool snake. But at the same time, you know what it's gonna be? It's gonna be a orange
Laser
snake
white snake.
on a white background.
Yep,
And that's
yep.
okay with like hints of delightful purple coming through it. And that's okay. Um it's we're probably past the days right now of like making a dreamsicle combo though that's like $10,000. And that's okay, right? It's the same argument I make albino pieds. They look good. They're good looking snakes. They're also $500 snakes, and that's okay. And there is no gene right now that you can mix with an albino pied to make it a $5,000 snake. Period. Like even albino clown pieds, which we have a couple that we've been trying to sell. Like they just you can't. And so you're going to run into that eventually with a lot of projects, and Dreamsicle is right there, right? And that's okay. Like we do what we can to add as much value to the project, but you have to have enough self-awareness in the project to realize that it's limiting, and you got to figure out how you're going to pivot from that, and maybe not make that 90% of your production.
So here's where the nerd side kind of jumps in, right? Because
Yeah.
you understand how to splice and how the genetics work on the alleles. Is
Yeah.
there a way to kind of cheat that with what you were saying? Because I would think with the genetic coding, depending on
Uh-huh.
how much it's been mapped, of course, right?
Yeah.
Like you would be able to see, okay, well, I know this is going to affect the way that the morph is going to be play into this. So, like
Mhm.
for a dreamsicle, if you were to find something that interacts on the allele in a different manner to bring out something besides just a bright or a very
Uh,
rich,
yeah.
vibrant orange, then it's the cheating way. But it would be
Yeah.
amazing.
You're talking like almost like Galaga level, like human
Yes, that would
customization.
be amazing.
Yeah, so I know there are a
If
couple
we
of
can clone
yeah.
prehistoric animals, we got to be able to genetically alter stuff to what we want.
So I know there are a couple of big breeders that basically think like we're a year away from like CRISPRing genes into snakes and all of that good stuff. Um, for those who don't know, CRISPR is a way that we make genetic alterations in cells in mice and if you're in China, humans. So that's fun. Uh, you know, look it up. It's crazy. They now have a child that is immune to HIV. It's pretty cool, but also horrifying that they did it to a human. Um, but it's fine. It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, we are. I don't want to say so far away because things move very quickly in science. They also it feels like an oxymoron because they also move very slowly at times. But anyway, things can move very quickly. And but as of now, we are so far away from realistically being able to alter snakes on that level to like have customization. Like I would argue decades. Like it's not something that's happening tomorrow. It's probably best case best case scenario 10 years from now. It's there's you have to
We'll
have
all still be in the game.
yeah, man. Yeah, man. You have to have like a full-blown working knowledge of the genome. You got to know a lot that's going on there. And we do this stuff regularly in rodents, mice, rats. We do it in zebrafish. We do it in fruit flies called Drosophila. We do it in all of those because they're called model organisms that are regularly used in the lab. Their genomes are known inside and out, to where like I would argue know as much as we can know about the genetic makeup of these animals, so that when we make alterations, we have a good idea of what's going on. I mean, some of these species we work with, like C. elegans, which is like a little worm that they use for a lot of different studies. They know how each cell actually develops in the animal. Like not just like, oh well, a stem cell turns into this, turns into this. No, they have blastoma 1 turns into this thing, neuron 1 turns into this thing, neuron 1, and like it's completely like the entire process. They've seen every cell develop. So like the level of understanding that we have on model organisms versus like ball pythons is infinitely greater, and we still struggle with inserting genes into model organisms. So yeah, we're a ways away, but I love the
Dimensionally.
idea, and I think that would be really cool.
Okay. So to kind of wrap things up,
Yeah.
I kept you a little longer than I
No,
promised.
you're good. You're good, man. My wife fell asleep about 45 minutes ago, so we're good. She
We're
sh-
safe.
she goes to bed at 10 o'clock every night, and I don't go to bed till like 3 every night, so it's fine. It's fine. We're good. We're good.
To kind of wrap it up, what's something that you would like to share, whether people have been in the hobby
Yeah.
for a year, 5 years, or they're just really finally taking it serious? What's one piece of advice you'd like to share for everyone?
Be honest with yourself. I I can't tell you the number of people that I've told sell your collection. Not because I'm trying to be an asshole, but because I look at what they're doing and I think there's something they can do way better. Um, Not everybody can make a living selling snakes. Not because uh, not because it's this magical skill that you have to have, but because sometimes it's a combination of luck or just, the way you do things. I think if you can be self-aware and take a moment and internalize and look at yourself and look at where you are in life and where you are in whatever business you're trying to do, and say I'm being really successful at this and I'm not being successful at this, and being honest enough with yourself to say this isn't working, give yourself an ultimatum, whatever, and see if it can work, and if it can't, move on. I think a lot of people spin their wheels and spend a lot of time and effort on things that just don't work out. I'm not saying give up early. I'm not saying give up quickly, but if you're struggling and you have one avenue of your business or your life that's going really well, and the other is taking away from that and not going really well, a lot of internal debate should happen and you should really have a conversation. I think being honest with yourself on a lot of levels, it sucks sometimes. Like it really does. And having that conversation, and also putting aside your own personal pride to be like, I need to do this because it's not working. So I think that's the biggest thing is self-awareness and like, be honest with yourself, because if you can be honest with yourself and you have the self-awareness to realize your shortcomings and your downfalls, you can parlay that into a million other successes that are going to help you so much more. And sometimes a short-term failure can mean a long-term win in the sense of like, you have two wings of your business. Say you're doing snakes and rats, right? If the snakes are just this constant drag on your resources and your effort and your time, and you're just not doing well in that, but you're crushing the rat side, I would tell you don't worry about the snakes right now. Grow those rats up because we need those, right? Grow those rats up. Make that a huge part of your business. Be super successful with that because you're doing well, and then slowly build up snakes over time if you want to have them as pets or kind of grow that eventually, but don't worry about it right now where it's causing pain and suffering in your life. So I think that's the biggest thing, just self-awareness and honesty with yourself. um
Love that.
yeah. Oh, and also like none of this happens quickly. Like it's very rare that people become millionaires overnight selling snakes. I would argue even Miguel, who dumped a shit ton of money into this, it took him 3-5 years before he really started crushing it. And I think that's as fast as it happens. This was a lot of pain and suffering over what almost, let's see, what year it's 20, so almost a decade, to where we're really starting to see significant gains in that. So I think that too, like just the self-awareness to realize it's going to take a long time and a lot of effort, and it's not always fun. Um, sometimes it really, really sucks. But if you have a good plan and things are working and you're not, suffering, keep going.
Okay. I freaking love that. So for everyone that wants to either pick your brain more
Yeah.
or pick Andre's brain, how do we reach out to you?
So Instagram is the fastest way to get a response from me, and that's at Chimera underscore reptile. There is another account called Chimera Reptile. I will also respond to that, just generally not as quickly. It's a long story why we have two, but we have two, so here we are. If you want consulting stuff, then you should definitely reach out through our Patreon, which is Chimera Reptile. Hold on, I'm checking this real fast because I can't remember if it's an S or
Don't
not.
mess it up.
I'm not. It's just Chimera Reptile. We kept, like, when we were, quick tangent here. While we were setting up our socials, there was an odd amount of Chimera Reptile or Reptiles, and so it was this constant back and forth where we tried to line everything up, but here we are. So Chimera Reptile, it's $30 a month. Um, every penny that you pay into the Patreon can be used towards snake purchases. We also once a month give out a $15 gift card or coupon code, whatever, for Ship Your Reptiles. So half of your Patreon membership is paid for with that. So that's super cool. We do everything through Ship Your Reptiles. We love them. They've worked with us to allow us to do that for our patrons. Um, we try and do bi-weekly talks, where we talk about, we're very business focused in our Patreon. So we talk about the business side of stuff. We started a new series where we have a guest speaker come in once a month and do a talk that is 100% industry agnostic, where they talk about being a startup. So we actually had our first one last week, or Tuesday, where a friend of mine came in and talked about the business model canvas. Next month, we'll have somebody come in who's a VP of marketing at a tech startup, and she's going to come in and talk about marketing. So, like, that's our big focus on that. So if you care about business and you want success, or at least an opportunity to be successful, I can't guarantee success, but like, we're going to do our best to give you the tools to be successful. Come hang out with us at our Patreon. I think we're a lot of fun. And like I said, that's Patreon, and then Chimera Reptile for that. Um, yeah, and then of course Morph Market, we're just Chimera. I think there's a gecko company on Morph Market as well. But if you're looking for ball pythons, we're the only Chimera. We got a lot of cool stuff, ranging from $300 snakes to like $12,000 hypo clown hides. So we got the gambit. If you're looking for a snake, I think we can find you one.
Love it.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, you can find us on Facebook, I'm sure, but who uses Facebook anymore, right?
Everybody, that's where you shit talk.
Oh, wait, is that how that works? Damn,
Yeah.
that's why I keep missing out on the shit talk.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get. That's right. That's where Darian is posting everything. God damn it! This is why I miss out on all that. Okay. Yeah, we do have a Facebook as well. I don't check that messenger hardly ever. As far as I know, we have one customer that messages me, and he's in Asia, and it's only because it's for exports. So anyway, you can find us there too if you want. But Instagram and Patreon are the two best for sure.
Okay. All right. Y'all, I hope you enjoyed tonight with him. I'm going to throw you back in the green room if you'll hold on for just a second. And
Yeah, absolutely.
crap.
For listening.
Do it again.
No, thank you everyone for listening. I really appreciate y'all coming out and hanging out with us tonight. Before he just kicks me out, just want to say bye.
I did. I was just
he's
get out.
He's like, get the fuck out of here. Thank y'all so much, and have a great rest of your weekend. And I hope to see y'all soon.
Y'all, I hope you really enjoyed it. Patrick's a great dude. I really enjoyed this tonight myself. I'm gonna say it was something I kind of really needed to hear tonight. I've had a rough week when it comes to reptiles, so I'm gonna talk about that with Patrick later. I hope y'all join us next weekend for another episode. Next week we'll actually have Kent from Craft Brew Morphology. He had me on as a guest a couple weeks ago, and I just feel like it's right to give some love to people that are coming up with me, and hopefully we see him succeed. So make sure you check that out. We'll see you next weekend. Love y'all. Y'all stay blessed.